Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The American heavyweight Jarrell Big Baby Miller, he's continued his unbeaten run, advancing to 21-0 with one draw, with a wide decision win over Frenchman Johann Duhaupas in Brooklyn. So this fight, it was on the Danny Jacobs undercard. And it really was a sort of tale of two halves, sort of the first 6 rounds. It was quite strange. A lot of action, lively in that first 6 rounds. But then the second half, Duhaupas just faded badly after the 6th round. And it allowed Miller to essentially hoover up all the later rounds. 2 judges scored it 119-109. And the third 117-111. And that matched my scorecard, unofficial scorecard. I definitely had Duhaupas winning more than 1 round, likely 3. But you know, I can't argue with 2 rounds, 3 rounds. It was competitive in those first 6 rounds. I'll get to a quick synopsis of the action and then to some thoughts, because there's some positives for Miller to take away from this fight, but in the same breath, it wasn't exactly the statement performance he was looking for. Okay, round 1, I'll be honest, I actually missed the first sort of minute and a half of round 1. There's sort of tardiness on my part. I was editing a video and then, I better get in front of the TV. But I did see Miller land a really nice right hand, so I didn't catch too much of that one. But round 2, very interesting. Miller landing a very nice uppercut to start off a flurry that certainly hurt the Frenchman Johann Duhaupas. But unfortunately, sort of some of the momentum of that round sort of got thrown off a little bit because there was a minute or so reprieve for Duhaupas because of a low blow. And, you know, Duhaupas after that sort of got back into a bit of a rhythm. Round 3 was essentially Duhaupas' best of the fight. He was shooting nice jabs, body shots. He was the busier of the two. And strangely, Miller, when he was getting inside, he was making an effort to get in close, but then he'd do nothing when he got there. It was quizzical indeed. Rounds 4 and 5, Duhaupas definitely boxing well, and he was very game when on the inside. And both men overall, very aggressive, very willing. Some good leather was traded. But Miller, he was probably able to get the better of it. He was landing good bursts of punches, especially uppercuts. And it was a pretty decent punch for him in this fight. And Miller, he was also showing us some good movement and also a little bit of a back foot game. He wasn't just relentlessly plodding forward with the high guard up. If anything in this fight, Miller's hands were dangerously low pretty much for the entire fight, and he was definitely there to be hit. But he obviously thought, well, I can take the best of Johann Duhaupas, and sometimes he took some shots to get away some of his own work. But he was the aggressor overall in this fight, especially after the 6th round. And that 6th round, that heralded a bit of a slackening in the pace for this fight overall. And it sort of reverted more to sort of boxing from the outside. And at the end of this round, Duhaupas' corner, they could be heard saying, take it to the later rounds. That's our plan. But clearly he wasn't able to execute, because Miller, he basically assumed from this point onwards, for the latter rounds, his usual march forward, grind him into the dust sort of mentality. And it looked to have almost worked after the 11th round, because Duhaupas, he did appear to sustain some sort of injury, a leg injury perhaps, and he was complaining of that in the corner after the end of round 11. So it looked like a retirement might come at that point, but he did decide to brave on and tough it out. But unfortunately for him, he wasn't able to do much in the 12th, and it kind of it limped to its conclusion. And that was how the last sort of 6 rounds, from Duhaupas' perspective, that's what happened. There just wasn't much to write home about. So the post-fight interview, it wasn't much chop either. Max Kellerman, for whatever reason, focusing on Miller's weight for the most part. Miller said he was pleased he went 12 for the first time and that he can be in better shape. But in terms of that, he didn't necessarily mean smaller. He meant he needs to maintain it and eat clean. He felt that his conditioning, it was good, but he did feel his legs were a little slow. And then Miller proceeded to call out Anthony Joshua again, something along the lines of, G-string needs to come here and I'll toast him. So my thoughts overall. Okay, Johann Duhaupas, he was probably a little bit unlucky not to get more than 1 round on 2 of the judges' scorecards. But overall, I don't have any quibble with the result. It was definitely a comfortable win for Miller, and he was never really in trouble. Even though it was a decent win, it wasn't the statement win Miller may have been hoping for. He was very aggressive early on, and he looked like he wanted to get Duhaupas out of there, and that would have been a statement. Duhaupas, a very durable guy. And Miller, he looked decent overall. It was a workmanlike effort, but he was always expected to beat this opponent, who did actually fight like a 37-year-old fading contender in the second half of the fight. It wasn't great work from Duhaupas in that second half of the fight, and Miller, he basically coasted to the finish. So arguably, it's debatable how much Miller stock actually rises off the back of this performance. It was another sort of performance against Wok where he was expected to beat that opponent, and he beat this opponent. And, you know, what can you really take from it? And the call-out of Anthony Joshua, it was predictable. But I'm not sure if this fight actually really did much to build more interest in seeing that Joshua fight. Not yet, at least. And I'm sure that the likes of Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder, if they saw that fight, they wouldn't be quaking in their boots. Miller, I think against a better opponent, because he is so open, he would be taking shots. He had his hands down dangerously low, and a top boxer would exploit that more than Duhaupas was able to do. Tiredness overtook Duhaupas, and yeah, it wasn't good. But what I did like about Miller's performance, he worked hard for most of the fight. He did take minute periods off here and there, sort of in the round sort of 6 to 8. But overall, he worked hard, his volume was good, and he was throwing hard shots until the end of the fight. He also showed decent stamina for someone weighing 304 pounds. He was in control for much of the fight, not, dominating it so it was so one-sided, but overall he controlled the fight pretty well, and he never looked out of sorts. He kept a good, cool head in there. And on the weight front, because it's obviously been an issue that we've all been talking about, because 304 pounds, 21 pounds more than his last fight, it's a talking point. But it didn't appear to be an issue in the ring. But we also do have to consider the opponent in front of Miller, which was Duhaupas. He wasn't able to push Miller for more than 6 rounds. So had it been someone better, who knows what may have happened in terms on the conditioning side. I do hope that they do match Miller with someone more on his level, because it's going to be hard to build much hype around him if he's facing some of these, on-the-slide former title contenders. And that's no disrespect to guys like Mariusz Wok and Johann Duhaupas, but they are on the wrong side of their primes, and they don't exactly have the biggest name recognition with casual fans. Miller needs to face someone more on his level where we consider it a more competitive fight heading into this. The quote of the night for me was from Miller. He said at the end, "I like cheeseburgers. What can I say?" What did you make of it? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. And before I'm out, I'm going to play this little montage.